Well, we've got top of the hour here. We can go ahead and get started. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Our Community of Practice monthly webinars are an opportunity to share best practices and collaborate with peers. We hope to provide a space where you can reflect on monthly topics related to your teaching philosophy in the hopes that your teaching philosophy can inform your decisions in the classroom. Um, Go ahead, and if you could advance the slide, Jackie.
So sorry, I have so many things on my screen.
Nope, that's okay. That's what we can ease into this.
Right.
That's fine. It feels like a Monday where I am. So, as a quick reminder, these webinars are based on the 2023-24 annual faculty curriculum, which is based on leveraging a philosophy of teaching to benefit both instructors and students. And the annual faculty curriculum posits that a well-articulated teaching philosophy will make teaching more enjoyable and effective. One's teaching philosophy will reflect on various learning theories, embrace the culture of care, and incorporate your own successful strategies from the classroom experience, both as a student and an instructor. And we really want faculty to view their teaching philosophy not as another task or just another box to tick, but rather as a framework that will empower you and provide you with information that's been proven to contribute to student success. So if you've not yet completed the annual faculty curriculum, please, we'll drop a link in the chat for you so you can complete it. And if you have completed it, thank you so much. And Jackie, if you could forward the slide. Some of you may know we have a little bit of a competition going on here. You can see how the numbers are adding up month by month. So we're making some slow and steady progress here. But just now's the time to think about who's going to win this competition. So thank you so much. Again, if you've completed it, if you haven't, jump in there and take care of it. Again, Jackie, if you could go ahead and forward. So today's goal is to support faculty incorporate their beliefs and strategies surrounding intellectual engagement into their teaching philosophy. In this session, we hope to offer perspectives that prompt you to consider your beliefs on the subject, and we'll also hear from Student Affairs Program Manager and Instructor Matt Phillips. You'll then get a chance to collaborate with your peers in the breakout rooms to discuss your own experiences and co-construct language that shares how you incorporate intellectual engagement as part of your teaching philosophy. And please note, we appreciate and love your participation in these sessions, and we want this to be a safe space. You never have to be on camera if you don't want to be on camera. You don't have to participate in the breakout rooms if you don't want to. Just know that if you are in the breakout rooms and you do want to participate and you are off camera, just simply raise your hand and the facilitator will call on you. Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward with the slide. And so before we get started, let's just take a moment and if you could just type in the chat, how do you define intellectual engagement? Curiosity, I like that word. Stimulating curiosity and inquiry, looking at what they've written, asking, oh, we dig a little deeper. Nice. Honesty, interesting, lifelong learners. Question and answers, evidence-based discussions. I love that. Meaningful dialogue, critical thinking and engagement. Wonderful, sharing ideas and knowledge, engagement, stimulating words of wisdom, asking students to reflect on their own thinking. Very nice. Exchange. Oh, wow, they're coming so fast now. Wonderful. Well, these will probably keep coming in. Thank you so much for sharing these ideas here. It sounds like everyone has a very solid concept of intellectual engagement and some really, wow, Socratic dialogue. Love it. I keep seeing these things coming in. But right now, if we can go ahead and forward this slide, we're going to turn things over to Matt Phillips. Matt, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. If you hear a jackhammer or a tile saw in the background, that's because evidently cast iron pipes don't last forever. And I reserve the right to secretly blame my home inspector for every fee I incur from now until eternity to repair this home. That's a little home ownership joke, humor for those of you who enjoy that. Happy to be here. So I only have 2 slides. I'm going to talk for around 8.5 minutes, if that, okay? My goal is, and I hope everybody can hold on to the thread here with me, it's to sort of reveal how I injected my own beliefs about education and intellectual engagement into my teaching philosophy, right? Full disclosure, I developed mine to encompass like multiple modalities, multiple instructional situations, including one-on-one coaching of writers, both at the undergraduate and graduate levels. Okay. So I'm just going to try and toss some ideas your way. That's my goal here. So the top quote on this slide is from my own teaching philosophy, which is very simple. I've shared it before in the community of practice. So it's in there somewhere. The bottom quote comes from a great book called Engaging Ideas by John C. Bean. That book is cited in the works cited at the end of this PowerPoint, if you want to check it out. I'm sort of known as a career services person. That's where I came up here at UAGC, how I got my start here. A lot of academics and educators expect someone like me to like drive hard on quantifiable skills, very employment-centric ideas. That's an approach in some cases, but that's not really my approach generally. I think it's kind of short-sighted. So when I got into higher ed, and started to truly see myself as an educator, which has been hard, right? I come from a blue collar family. Nobody's been a teacher. Nobody has a degree. Nobody's a coach or whatever, right? But when I started to be able to see myself as an educator, I really had this notion, and still do, that the ways in which a person thinks or tries to think, or the effort of thought itself, that's a practice of liberty, right? So that's my idea that I've got from my various teachings and readings. And so the question might be, I think, for me, is there a connection between the practice of liberty and intellectual effort or critical thought? I think there is. My position is that engaging intellectually is practicing one's liberty. I went to an MFA program at UTEP. I focused deeply in post-World War II noir crime fiction, really dark stuff. One of the penultimate texts is The Killer Inside Me by Jim Thompson. It was made into a film a few years back with Casey Affleck. The main character is a police officer. His name's Lou Ford. He's very handsome. And by all accounts in the town, he's an excellent law enforcement officer, right? We come to find out through the book that Ford is actually spiritually and cognitively disfigured. In fact, he's one of the most terrible figures in post-World War II fiction. The point here, and a major theme in this work and other works of noir, is that a person can hide significant flaws beneath the facade of hard skills and technical excellence, right? A person can hide, on purpose or not, flaws in their thinking. In other words, technical proficiency is a portion of what it means to be fully engaged with each other, with our disciplines, with the world at large. Examples, the work of Eddie Van Halen or Bell Hooks or Keith Haring or Borges or James Baldwin, Steve Jobs, Stephen Hawking, Michel Foucault. These people have high level of technical expertise, the highest, but they are original for how they think in tandem with their technical excellence, right? At least that's my opinion. Taking it back to students. I ran into a former student a few months back. I was in Tucson for the really cool festival of books they have there at UA. Totally random encounter, but she's now a practicing physician. I had worked with her as a writing coach as she tried to gain admission to medical school years ago. She was the student all of us recognize. High achieving, technically proficient as a writer and researcher, a student who does all her assignments, gets a 4.0, had a 4.0 all the way through, did really well on the MCAT, etc. But it was surprising. She really resisted any questions I had for her during her writing process, right? For her essays to get into medical school. Like, why is medicine right for you? What do you believe about the practice of medicine? When did you begin to focus your life on this idea of being a physician? What is that life? How does it look? The drafts she created of her personal statement and secondary essays, they were technically sound, like perfect. She was the perfect medical school candidate based on a variety of factors that I already knew about. But she did not have answers to the questions I was asking her. None, no idea. I'll get back to her story, but just kind of keep that in your mind's eye. Can you go to the next slide, Jackie? I don't know if you're controlling. Thank you. All right, so in the book Engaging Ideas by Bean, again, cited at the end of this PowerPoint, it's more than 10 years old now. There's been a few additions. But he positions writing as a way of thinking, right? So, or a demonstration of the ways in which one thinks. I'm horrible with French, so I apologize in advance. He dives into this French idea of brouillon. I don't know if I said that right. And this is a rough draft before even making what we as English speakers and writers would call an outline, right? Some of us might call it free writing, which is fine, but our approach is generally predicated on the outline. What's interesting is that Bean posits that if we want to develop courageous thinkers, we need to make more room for scrambled thought and intellectual chaos, especially in what he calls like an ungraded way. That's not to say it's not evaluated. The chaos and intellectual scramble is still evaluated. But the demonstration of mastery per like a rubric isn't really like a thing. It's not the central focus or even present in that situation. Back to that student. When I was working with her, when she couldn't answer these questions, I convinced her to start the writing process anew. And this is how we started. I just said, I convinced her. Spend 20 minutes writing whatever comes into your head about your future as a physician or otherwise. Can you imagine being anything else? I want to know what's inside you. The numbers tell me that you will get into medical school. Like, that's not an issue. You're going to get in. I already know that. Let's find out what else you have to offer or explore. This idea, how I approached her, my instructions came directly from the how I practice section of my teaching philosophy that I had written and developed over a course of years. As technically proficient as this student was at the time, and I was like, this has happened to me on multiple occasions, but she said that nobody ever asked her to do that, to mind her own psyche, to think about her thinking. No one had ever done that for her. And she graduated pre-med from a very exclusive college. She ended up writing about what it was to care for other human beings, to set yourself aside for the good of somebody else. And she had very specific ways in which she had done that throughout her life, outside of pre-med, outside of like any school thing. And she wanted to focus her life on doing the most good she could for other people. That was actually her goal, not to be a doctor. So again, make no mistake, this woman was going to get into a medical school, and she's now a practicing physician, thankfully. But I was able to engage her in a way that like she had never been engaged before, despite like extreme formal success, like near perfect SAT, etc. So that was really interesting. Jumping to the course, the Leveraging a Teaching Philosophy course. If you've completed or do plan to complete that course, you'll encounter some of Freire's work, Paulo Freire. Part of what he does is look at or reveal the social cost, the banking method of education. And again, we see this in a lot of our formal education, especially with high achieving students. He frames it in terms of perpetuated systemic oppression, right? Bean, in a very practical book, John C. Bean, Engaging Ideas, he does the same thing. He says that, just to summarize, when technical mastery is divorced from what people really think, when we only devise learning opportunities that can be graded and red-penned, the possibility that one is truly thinking diminishes and diminishes and diminishes until there's no thought occurring. For me, when I encounter students and when I look at things today with like AI, artificial intelligence, what scares me most as an educator is that much of the intellectual chaos, the scramble, that truly develops people as thinkers or practitioners of liberty, it can be easily skipped, right? To create a watered down piece of work. It's technically sound in a lot of ways. I'm calling it auto-tune thought, right? Sort of like making them akin to like really highly produced music, popular music. In other words, the final product, which may or may not display mastery, is a small piece of what it means to be adept as a thinker, to engage intellectually. And again, back to my claim, I think we liberate others and develop great thinkers by creating access and opportunity for repeated intellectual engagement. And I've built that into my own teaching philosophy based on my life and my academic studies. That's all I have. I hope that helps as we break out into the breakout rooms, or maybe it won't help, which is possible as well.
you so much. Of course, that's going to help, Matt. Thank you. Yeah, you don't often hear Foucault and Eddie Van Halen and bell hooks all mentioned in the same presentation. So I love it. Love it. So, Jackie,
You don't have that t-shirt? You don't have the two bell hooks?
right.
Okay.
You are a Renaissance man, my friend. So if you could go ahead and forward this slide, Jackie, that'd be great. So, again, we want to clarify you certainly don't have to agree on one statement here. You can have different ideas, put them all together. You're going to put together probably multiple statements. The person who's facilitating your room will likely put together a bunch of statements at the conclusion of the breakout room. So don't feel like you all have to agree on one thing, but just want you to offer your thoughts, think about what others offer, think about how others' ideas may change your own perspectives and maybe other people's position. Maybe Matt's discussion here gave you new ideas or inspired you to consider another perspective. If you can go ahead and forward this slide, Jackie. So we're going to co-construct a statement about intellectual engagement for your teaching philosophy. And Jackie's got you into breakout rooms. Those will be coming up. If you do not get a breakout room number, that means you're sticking around here with me and Jackie. So I'll let Jackie take care. That will probably be in there about 20-25 minutes or so. You'll get a 5-minute warning when we're ready to getting close to coming back.
Awesome. And yes, I did already put the prompt in the chat for everyone to grab. That is leading the rooms. Everyone who's leading, you know who you are. If you have any questions, you can ping me on the side. And I'm opening the rooms. We can go ahead and get started, Amy. There'll be some people that jump in, but this should be the
Okay.
group.
Oh, great. Great. Okay. And I can take notes, Jackie. Okay. If I go off on mute, it's because my dog is ill behaved and I apologize. So, but she's so cute. I mean, she's ridiculously cute.
Well, I really liked what Matt said about how the part that develops someone intellectually can be skipped. I think that's extremely valuable. I'm not sure how that would go into a philosophy, but I really like that.
One of the things that really jumped out to me, because I teach in history, and I think that there is a certain amount of unacknowledged trauma dumping that happens in lieu. Like people think, oh, I'm thinking constructively, but they're not really. They're thinking very emotionally about past injustices, both to themselves and to sometimes their forebears and people that often looked or thought or acted like them. And like I don't know, there's this actually we often talk about, oh well, we need to be more compassionate to the student, but we also actually there it's kind of unacknowledged. We need to be more compassionate to ourselves because when we're the ones that get to hear all the trauma, sometimes it's kind of relentless. And kind of acknowledging, to a student, yes, I get it. The world sucks. People suck. Men suck. Women suck. Everybody sucks. You didn't answer the question, but yes, everybody sucks. And that's a really hard line to follow sometimes because it's both acknowledging your pain, but also saying, I want you to go back to the sources because the sources didn't quite say that, but I get where you're going.
Such an interesting point, thinking emotionally versus intellectually. That's a really interesting point, especially I can see how in history that would be
Oh, the
really
civil
easy
rights
to do.
movement.
Oh, right,
Yes.
right. Or
Especially
anyone
during
who's read
George
any,
Floyd, that was harsh.
I live in Minneapolis. Tell me about it. My husband's a retired sheriff. You got nothing on me.
No,
So
not a
I'm
thing.
just kidding. No, but you're absolutely right. There's so yes, and we can get so caught up in the emotions that the facts and data get lost. And that is I love reading historical fiction because I feel like it can really make you feel like you're in someone's shoes in a different part of history. Um, but again, that's going to contribute definitely to the emotion versus the intellectual. But I've read a lot of books. I studied in Germany and read books about people in World War II, and my father-in-law fought in World War II. So um, yeah, it's a very emotional topic. It's hard to be, yeah. But that is such an interesting point, and Holly's point too of the intellectual piece being skipped in lieu of um I don't know, like this skill set or something. I mean, I feel like that taps into a lot of what Matt said as well.
I think that there's a less of a, I think right now, and I will shut up, I promise. I think that
No,
right
go
now,
on.
especially in the era of ChatGPT, we need to actually kind of make it clearer to students why they need it for themselves. Like ChatGPT can be wrong and sometimes is wowzers wrong. Um, and especially because they're thinking really short term, like, they got no more spoons, they don't care because the baby's screaming and all this stuff is going on in the background, and that toilet, it will not fix itself. And writing three more pages about this event is just not happening. So they're going to phone it in. And we need to actually make it clear, like, hey, this is actually not about me being a tyrant. It's actually about I need you to walk out into society and be able to think for yourself about something, to make a decision for yourself about something, or else somebody's going to always tell you what you think. Somebody's going to always dictate to you what you're supposed to be thinking or deciding. And that's not the way we need to structure our society. You need to have free will. And right now, for as long as you delegate that free will to somebody else, that independent thinking, you just don't have it. And that's hard to talk about too, because I get it. People do have kids and toilets that run over and house guests and all sorts of horrors. Yes, I just lumped kids into horrors. I'm sorry. I don't like them. They creep me out. I'm sorry. I just don't. I like kids when they are a fully adult and they're people.
I'm so with you. I can't even, I have animals, my friend. So yeah, you and
Yes.
I are gonna connect on so many levels here.
I
You're
think,
also,
oh,
oh,
go
go.
ahead, Matt.
I
No,
was
go
gonna
ahead.
say, I mean, one of the challenges too at UAGC, I think that I've seen and encountered is just like a lot of the curriculum, right? It's kind of standardized per course, and so you run into a lot of challenges. Like I remember teaching Intro to Lit at SDSU, is like there, I forget what it was. Like the students came back from like Coachella or something, like nobody's paying attention. It was one of those things, and I was like, oh, let's just do a survey. Like, what do you like about the course and what do you hate? And then they like told me what they hated, and I was like, cool, we're not doing that anymore. And like that isn't an option right here. So that's a real challenge, I think, for even when you structure your philosophy for a specific type of modality, it's really easy to be like, oh, I'll just change it, but you can't do that here. So I see some of that too with our coursework, I guess.
Word.
Because I mean, such a huge aspect of college is to learn how to question things, to not just accept like the life we've been giving or accept the information that we're receiving. It's to question it. It's to critical think about, what is happening? How does this affect me? How does this affect others? Where is this going in the future? It's what, I mean, Jason, I majored in history. That's my favorite part of it was that it wasn't about memorizing dates. It was about learning what emotions, feelings, ideas were going into these past events and why it was important so that one, we don't repeat certain mistakes, but two, beyond that, like we're understanding more about human nature in general and being able to question so that we don't just fall in line and we're able to really think for ourselves. And you had said like they think so much with emotion. Well, intellectual thinking is feeling those emotions, but then identifying it, right? Like being able to be like, I am thinking very emotionally about this. I understand my emotions. I can assess my emotions. And a problem we run into here is that these classes are only 5 weeks. Like, I truly feel like a student's life can be changed, but sometimes we as, as an instructor, you don't always have the time to change 30 students' lives in 5 weeks and get them all to question what their thought process is and really take a step back and look at the world from a different purview. So how do we combat time constraints? How do we combat, fitting in these ideas of critical thinking and questioning with a set curriculum, with these set standards in our classes? I mean, for the most part, we've thought in faculty affairs more of just the Socratic method, right? Like asking open-ended questions, really trying to get them to think, including real world events that are going on and around us and putting them in your announcements. I mean, like, what's everyone think about this? How does this have to do with psychology, or, whatever the case may be? But it's, the one thing I love about higher education is that when it has the capacity to change lives, it's not about memorizing dates or just getting a piece of paper. It has the capacity to change you as a person. Like, you can truly see beyond the parameters of the life that you thought you knew. And that's something that I feel like gets lost with the
You're,
APA and
you're a
the
way you're a way nobler person than I am. I got into history because I love the gossip. History is just gossip that we've all agreed is true.
yeah,
And I'm nosy. I just want to know all the dirt, spill all the tea, just talk to me about these people. And that's
Well,
why I teach history. It's all gossip we've just agreed is true.
so may I jump in here? I don't know if my voice is
Sorry.
being heard. Jason, can you hear me? Oh, well, I see as one issue the idea of consistency, and you mentioned what the young lady mentioned about 5 weeks, having 5 weeks to present material or influence on a candid, group of students. But without consistency, they go through my 5 weeks and they're on to the next track, which is another instructor, another teacher, another professor who's going to perhaps, well, they'll give them same curriculum that's in the text codified, but the styles, of course, are different, and that's we do want that. But critical thinking may be involved within my 5 weeks, but it might not be in another. And critical thinking, that's where I ask follow-up questions in every discussion, weekly discussion portal. And it is those follow-up questions that I'm asking them to take what they have read and written down and apply it. And it's a struggle for many. That it's like they don't really want to do that. They would rather just answer the question that's given to them on the prompt and move on to the assignments and then move on to the next week. So I stop them asking them certain questions, which brings out they have to apply information read, because otherwise all I'll be doing is a continuation of telling them what to think, not how to think, which to me, and I've been at this for 40 years, whether it's in teaching in police academies or junior college, state college, and that is my big issue as I see people out and about, adults. And I know, and when I talked with them for a short period of time, I realized that whether they went to a good quality school or whether they went to a school that just basically told them what to think and they can look things up, they spend 4 minutes on an article in the Google, and then they are supposedly walk around being experts on the subject. Well, I have, of course, have tried to impart information onto students. I get a handful of them that really connect, and they're the ones that really thank me and make statements as to it's nice to have this type of person guiding us, leading us, directing us. And then I feel that's fine. Perhaps for me, I went through 12 years of classical education in my youth, taught at a classical education, high school, middle school, for another 7 years. So I the Socratic method, all of the classical ideas of philosophies, all the psychologies. We taught that to the children, and the continuity was there grade to grade, because if all of the students started in the preparatory school as kindergartners and their journey went from K all the way to 12, every teacher was on the same page all the way throughout the 12 years in terms of the critical thinking skills. Therefore, when they came into my class, I already knew that they had a foundation, if they started in our school, of having the ability to critically think. So therefore, it's an old simple idea, or a quick anecdotal story. Is like, how do you spell such and such a word? What one would ask. And I'd say, well, see the dictionary there? Go get it. And it begins with the letter such and such. So they would look up the word and then stand and deliver, spell it. What does it mean? Use it in a sentence and sit down. Those students wouldn't have a tendency to misspell that word in the future. But that's a very simplistic way of telling them where to find the information rather than to tell them how to spell the word. And if you carry that on, they're not being taught what to think, they're being taught how to think. Anyway, that I'll get off this box here, but to me, a continuity, and I don't think we can get it or have it because you have diverse teachers, professors, instructors from different walks of life, which is what you want. However, they allow different strategies to be deployed by the student. So I just try to do what I can do to get them to think more. And when that final, one of my courses wrote, and I'll get off here in a minute, one of the courses is forensic science. The final 5th week is they are given a double homicide in a residence, and they have been taught over the 4.5 weeks what they need to look for, how to secure all of the evidence of the crime, how to package it, how to talk about it. And then I say, okay, here's the door. It's your scene, go. Huge critical thinking. They know stuff, they've written it, they've regurgitated it, they've answered the prompts in the discussion items. And then now let's see, what are you gonna do about it? How are you gonna use the tools? And I'm surprised, many of them are very successful. They just give me right exactly what I would do if I were on that scene, which is fabulous. Others struggle and they give you the book answer, which that's really not what I am ever looking for. But anyway, thank you for the time of getting this information into the forum here.
I'd like to say something. I teach undergraduate and graduate courses in human resource management. This is only my 5th course. And I want to say, I think it was Gary, my goal, or the process I use to see how well the students can improve their intellectual problem solving ability and just process kind of what is going on in the course is in the discussions, in the weekly discussions. And at first, when I started, I would just respond to the students, 6 students, 8 students a week per discussion, basically with the prompt that they would be responding to their fellow classmates. And I said, this is not going to work. So what I started doing was, like Gary said, I started asking them questions based on what they wrote. And then on in some instances, and I'll give you, for example, teaching strategies in resource management just started, and there's a discussion post on diversity. I would tell them, or I'll state, this is what diversity means to me. And when I was at such and such, I was on the diversity committee. I'd like you to comment on that. Do you feel that, do you consider, my point of view to be accurate? Why or why not? So that's what I try to do. And I always put the proviso, no matter if you comment or not, it's not going to have an effect on your grade. I found in the last 3 classes or courses that I've used this, that the top students always respond. And those that don't respond are normally not the top. It doesn't mean they're not good students, but they're not the top students with 98, 99 averages, et cetera, et cetera. So that's at least how I've been able to, or at least I've tried to, really work on the students' critical thinking. So that's all I'll say. I'll get off. Thanks.
Oh, thank you both so much. Anyone else have some? Looks like we've got about 18 people in the room, so please feel free to jump in and share your ideas with us.
Can I? Hi.
Hi.
I just would like to say I agree with David on the discussions. I think that one, we get to know the student, and we can kind of figure out where they're coming from in some of their responses. Also, I teach statistics to begin with, which is not a fun subject, in which most students begin their introduction with, I don't know who put me in this, and I don't know why they did this, but I'm here, or this is my third time. And I think the way the course has been designed and being redesigned is we really are asking students to really think about the discussion type questions and how statistics really affects all of us, and how we use it in our lives. So just that alone, they're using critical thinking. But the neat part of, I think, in the discussion for my groups have been in how they respond to other students after they read the student's position, and then they share something that relates to that position and then reinforces what they posted. So I think that the discussions really bring out their thought process. Of course, we have another application where they actually have to do some calculations, but even there, they share those and ask questions about them, and not only give you the answer, but they want to know why. And so I think we're really on the right track in that course, and they end up liking it, believe it or not. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. Now I'm kind of inspired to take these classes. Like, I'd love to enjoy statistics, and wow, so different than what I teach. Double homicides, right? This is quite a group we have here. So, wow. Anyone else want to weigh in? Or Matt, did you have any follow-up comments you wanted to share? Or?
I don't know. I did want to say a stats professor actually changed my life. I was going to write it in the chat. I had flunked out of community college a number of times. I'm flunked out. I mean, I left. I got bad grades or whatever. And this is kind of a weird story, but I had passed the course to get into stats. I forget what it was. Maybe it was Trig. It wasn't Trig. It was the one before. I forget the name. But and I had to show to get into the stats course, to continue into this JC that I was going to, I had to show him my transcript, and he was going to make the decision whether or not. Well, the transcript was highly embarrassing because it had F, withdrawn, D, F. And I'll never forget it. I was like so nervous. I'm an adult student. I was like 26 at the time. I come in, I'm like, I just need to get in the stats class. If I could do this, it'll unlock everything, right? So I show him the transcript. It's a paper one. He sits there at his desk and he looks at it for a good 45 seconds. And I got a C in the previous math course. And then he looks up at me and he goes, okay, you're in. And it was that moment that allowed me to end up going to a 4-year school, end up going to graduate school. Like, if it wasn't for that moment in a discipline that I'm not, like stats, I majored in journalism. I just needed to know the basics. I wouldn't be here. So, I mean, I think the power of the educator is really important. And I think his philosophy was like, I'm going to give you a shot, and that was enough.
That's so nice. Yeah, we talk about that a lot, don't we? Just the power of educators, how much I remember when I taught at a community college, I was so frustrated because I had some kids who just didn't do anything. And then I remember my dean saying to me, they may come and flunk out 3 times and then they get traction and they go and they just still really impress you. So don't worry about it. This is just part of the process, So are we being put back in office in my breakout rooms? Are people coming back, Jackie?
Yeah.
All
Way
right.
back. probably like 20 more seconds.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you all so much. Okay, welcome back. People are coming, and Sally's got your hand raised. Sally, are you gonna start us
Well,
off to
is
share some
everybody back? I
takeaways?
can start us off. I usually don't share during this time, but real quickly, I just think there was a strong theme through our discussions that intellectual engagement comes when our students feel safe and they feel seen by their instructor. They feel that their instructor is being genuine, and that their instructor is willing to be vulnerable and not be, as we say, the sage on the stage. And it's about, one of the last things that was shared is it's really about tone and creating that space. Like Matt said, part Lyceum, part art show, was it? But creating that space um, where the chaos can reign, but reign in a way that makes things happen. So that was the general flavor of the things that surfaced in our group.
Sally, could I do a follow-up on that? You mentioned safety, they feel secure, safe within the classroom. And you and I probably had spent many years teaching at the brick and mortar type institutions. So can you imagine that generation where they were actually, you could see them eyeball to eyeball, and they could look at each other, a totally different dynamic. And then nowadays we have online learning where they don't see me, they don't see each other, and yet they have the freedom to type what it is they want to type, with some anonymity, and only the name pops up. So that this modern group or generation does have a leg up or a lot of advantages in terms of being quote unquote safe. What I think they just don't want is the professor or teacher, instructor to write in a certain way that's going to make them feel uncomfortable, as if they were in the brick and mortar room and they think you're berating them, where you're just basically giving them ideas that don't, or that conflict with theirs, or that they haven't heard of before. So, that is a great point about making them feel safe. It's just kind of bolstering them and enhancing what they have to say in writing to give them a feeling that they're on the right track, and then hopefully they will continue to improve.
That's a great point. Thanks for adding that, Gary.
So important. We've talked about this before in faculty affairs. We've just talked about the importance of that feeling of safety, because if you are feeling threatened, you cannot learn. If you're feeling threatened, if you're feeling afraid, your brain is not wired to take in new information if you're focused on survival. So, and that can feel like survival to some folks. So thank you so much, both of you, for bringing that up, and Sally for discussing your room and what you guys came up with. Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in and share?
I like to jump in and add to what everybody else is saying, especially Amy when she talked about survival. I want to not only make them feel safe, but I also want them to be risk takers. Come on, step out there and see what you can come up with. That's not what everybody else has put into this discussion.
Right. I used to show that. It was a commencement speech by, oh, how come I can't think of his name? Fail big is what he said. If you're gonna fail big. Really go out there and just nail it. So if you're gonna get it wrong, get it really wrong. It's okay. We can clean it up and we'll start over. But Denzel Washington, fail big. Check it out. It's a great speech. Benita, you gonna talk to us, my friend?
Yeah, I am. I just put some notes in the chat. I was trying to get all the thoughts together, but we had an amazing conversation. And one of the things that was kind of like the thread was mutual respect, right? Making sure that we have conversations where we're keeping that student, their personal information, for example, in a sacred space. So when we're having conversations from an intellectual standpoint, we're meeting them where they are. We're trying to understand as much about their background before we start having a conversation with them. So that was important. We talked about how the level of conversation is going to be different based on undergrad, graduate level, PhD level. You're going to have a different kind of conversation. And so you're going to make sure that you use the appropriate methods to have those conversations with those individuals. We talked about making sure we set them up for success. So whatever conversations we do have from an intellectual standpoint, we don't want to get too far into the academic rigor part of the conversation before we try to just ease our way into the conversation so they can feel comfortable. And then just basically making sure that they just feel comfortable at the end of the day. Are we giving them enough time for them to just be relaxed, be comfortable, and give them opportunity for them to ask questions? And then critical thinking questions definitely came up. How can we, format our critical thinking questions to the student in a way where we're still setting them up for success, making sure they do understand the academic rigor, but at the same time, making sure that they feel good at the end of the day when they walk away from us. That's it in a nutshell, Amy.
Well, thank you so much, Vanita. I appreciate that. Anyone else
Hey.
want to share?
Yeah, Amy, I'll share. We had some of the same sentiments as some of the other rooms here. One of the things I'll say right up front is that the idea of taking this many voices and constructing it into one statement was not something that I don't even think we didn't even give it a fair attempt. We were learning and discussing with one another, collaborating. So we needed another hour for that, I think. But one of the things that came out that I do want to share is that in our room, it was the number one thing that came out over and over again was that our instructors are learning from our students as well. So there were some great lines in there that learning is about challenging our perceptions, that we have to create a dialogue because everyone has a voice, and for it to be active learning, there needs to be meaningful dialogue. Several people said that they learned with their students, they're learning at the same time their students are learning. They learn something every time they are with a class or see an assignment, they'll take something away from it. And it's important for the students to know that we are all in this together. And that as an instructor, the instructors are co-learners learning along with the students. And of course, building that safe environment, engaging in the dialogue, and allowing the students to know that they don't have to be, that what they need to do is challenge their perceptions and then apply it. What did you know about this before the class started? Now, what do you think about it? And then along the way, we can all challenge our perceptions and learn from one another. That was the biggest, that along with, we're not going to be able to come up with a teacher philosophy were the two biggest things that, a line from the teacher philosophy were the two biggest things that came out of our room.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Andre. Anybody else like to?
I can jump
Well,
in, Amy. I don't see my
you.
raise hand button, so I hope I wasn't speaking over someone else. I'm definitely picking up on some similar themes in that we discussed it in our breakout room as was discussed in others. We didn't get to touch on creating the safe space, so that is a lovely augmentation to the conversation that we had in our breakout room. But one additional piece that I wanted to pull out is that we landed on two things actually, is that intellectual engagement means we're sparking curiosity, we're aiming for the aha moment, and we see that when a student says, oh, I never really thought about that concept or XYZ from that perspective before. And that's a demonstration of when we've achieved intellectual engagement in our classrooms. And that led to a conversation about using students' motivation for being in the classroom as a way to spark their own intellectual engagement. And so we know that we have adult learners who are looking to start a new career, advance in their career, and that is a strong motivational factor. And so using as an instructor, your own perspective, experience, expertise in your field, and sharing that with students encourages and motivates their own level of intellectual engagement. And then lastly, we talked about the constructivist learning theory that states, that tying the learning, it ties that learning theory to concepts, or asks students to tie their own experience to the learning concepts, and how that leads to learning that is more problem-based rather than content-oriented, which then circles back around to students' motivation for their own learning, in that they're aiming to advance in their career. And so use this learning opportunity as a way to gain perspective in your field, engage in that problem solving. Again, throwing in that safe space piece is so critical to allow folks to apply what they've learned and not just memorize concepts.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Everyone, thank you for sharing. Jackie, if you can go ahead and forward the slide. So let's continue this conversation in Teams. So all the content from this presentation and discussion will be posted in the Community of Practice Teams channel by the end of the week. So we will also have another session on Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. That'll be the same topic, but sometimes we have repeat offenders, I guess we'll call you guys, because we've been talking criminal justice in our group. So if you want to join us again on Thursday, please feel free to do that. Faculty, please note this participation in the community practice fulfills your professional development requirement. And we invite you to join us next month as well, as we dig into academic freedom. And if Jackie, if you could forward that, perfect. This is your last chance if you want to be a faculty guest star. Please send me an email. Again, the topic is academic freedom and how that relates to your philosophy of teaching. We'd just love to hear from you if you want to be a part of that. So thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you possibly Thursday if you want to join us again. If not, we'll see you in June.